turned out to be very good results. So our presentation outline is there. We are going to look at the background, which I've kind of given you a glimpse of it, the rationale for this study, the theory that was used for underpinning this study, purpose of the study, objectives, research questions and hypotheses, conceptual framework, research methodology, findings, conclusions, and recommendations. And this was a retrospective cohort study designed to provide feedback that would help stakeholders to understand why performance trend in PLE changed from all the time poor to better, more especially during the COVID period when the school systems were paralyzed. And as I mentioned, we used the school effectiveness theory to help us come out with these factors that help in explaining why there were better performance instead of poor performance, despite the fact that there were a lockdown. What was the rationale of the study? It's just as I tried to explain, more candidates obtain Division 1 up to 4, which we take as passing grades, more than it used to be. So that's why we had to sit down to find out the reasons why they had to come up with this better performance. So this improved academic performance created curiosity among the different stakeholders with the need for factors to account for such performance for the candidates during these lockdown crisis times. So students, teachers, parents, and the world over perceived the decline or worse results in candidates' performance in the year 2020. That's what we thought would be, but it turned out not to be like that. And even the students themselves were uncertain about the good academic performance. So this provided, the research that we did is going to provide a well-researched information which is thought to enhance UNEP's feedback mechanism leading to client satisfaction. You know, there's this thing, say our students did well, they did very well. So what made them do well is why we are here. And that is why this research was conducted. With what purpose? The purpose of this study was to establish the factors that led to better academic performance in the PLE with the aim of providing information to stakeholders that can be used for improving academic performance in primary schools that have poor performance. Remember, it has always been poor, but this time round, it came out as good, better. So we could pick those factors that can help us, help these other schools that have not been doing well, to pick good practices from it and be using for improving their performance. We had only 2 objectives to guide us through this study. The first one was to determine the most significant factors that led to better academic performance in the PLE in Uganda in the year 2020, and to examine the relationship between these most significant factors and academic performance in PLE in this country in the 2020 PLE examinations. And as you well know, your researchers is just to formulate those objectives into questions, and those are the questions that guided the study. And we wanted it to be more scientific, more than the usual scientific. That's why we even had to bring in the hypothesis to prove whether these factors were really so or not. So we used one hypothesis that there was positive and significant relationships between factors that contributed to the candidates' overall better performance in PLE in 2020 and their academic performance. The study covered the whole country. That was our scope. And if you look there, where there are those red dots, that is where we moved to pick the information. And we only picked them from 49 regions, with the regions, primary schools, I mean, from all the 15 regions in Uganda. And these 49 schools were taken from all over the country. And we also used 49 secondary schools with the largest population, which were purposely selected to participate in the study. You wonder why we are talking of PLE. Again, we are talking of secondary. For this good reason, that the candidates who were in senior 3, these this year where the candidates who sat for PLE in 2020, and as the language says, that you have to get it from the horse's mouth, and these were the horses that we were picking the information from. They're the people who performed well. So we had to follow them in the different secondary schools that they were admitted in. And that is why the secondary school aspect of it came in. The content scope, the study actually focused on two things. We were looking at the most significant factors, and we were examining the relationship between these most significant factors and academic factors, academic performance. The time scope, this refers to the period from the time when the school system was paralyzed, the lockdown period due to COVID-19, up to the time that the candidates sat the 2020 PLE. We call it 2020 PLE, though we sat in 2021, because we extended those 3 months that ran into 2021. But still, the year of the exams remained as 2020. The conceptual framework is as you see. This is based, or we adopted it from the school effectiveness theory, and those are the independent variables that we worked on: the government factors, the school factors, teacher classroom factors, parental factors, home factors, and learners' personal characteristics that would lead us to the better academic performance, which is our dependent variable. Methodology, let me leave some young blood come and do it. Matthias, sorry, Matthias, where are you? You're making me call you a name. Fathers, come on. These are the people I work with, that's why the names keep coming. Fathers, please come on.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Madam Florence. Under the methodology, we looked at the approach. We had 2 approaches. One was qualitative and the other one was quantitative. In the quantitative analysis, the research design we used was exploratory cross-sectional research design, and in that, the methods we used were structured, semi-structured interviews, and then also interviews. And the purpose was to get views and opinions of the stakeholders about why better performance. And in the quantitative approach, the research design used was correlational design, where a relationship between academic performance and the factors under government, school, teacher classroom practices, parental factors, and learner personal characteristics were investigated. And these 2 approaches were rooted in the constructivist ideology and then positive ideology, or you can sum it as pragmatism. Now, the study population included the head teachers. We had the senior 3 students who sat the PLE examination, and their number was 6,591 and 913. The head teachers were from those schools, the PLE schools, which registered for UNEB examinations, and that time the senders were 14,300. And we also looked at the school chairperson, SMC chairpersons of those schools. We also interviewed DIS, the municipal inspector of schools in the districts. And according to UNEB statistics, they are altogether 176 across the country. And we did not forget the P7 teachers who taught these candidates that time. And there were 196, including teachers of science, mathematics, English, and SST. Then we also considered parents' representatives. These are parents whose candidates sat the PLE examinations. Now, when you look at the samples, you have the following. We sampled the senior 3 students using 3-stage stratified sampling, and the method of data collection with them was the self-administered questionnaire together with the semi-structured questionnaire. And we targeted 500 learners, and out of that, we are able to get the 500 learners. So the response rate that time was 100%. The primary school teachers were from the 49 selected schools. These were the best schools which performed well in peer index time, and the response rate was also 100%. The primary school teachers equally were from those best schools, and the response rate was also 100%. So when you look at that, the overall response rate was 99%, which was much above the recommended 68% by Holtman in 2022. The response rate for a survey study kept increasing from 46% to the current, which was 48%, and this was above that, implying that the study responses were from a reasonable number of respondents. Now, data quality control. We had validity. Under validity, we looked at 2 components of validity. Where we said validity is the extent to which the research instrument measure what is expected to measure. And under that, we looked at face validity, where the experts in the research simply used their expertise to look at the validity from the face of the instrument. And in that, we constituted a committee of researchers to do that, and they did a good job. Then under content validity, we are interested in finding out or evaluating the relevance and clarity of the questions to the objectives. And this was also done by the research experts in the department. Now, reliability. This was how consistent and dependable the instruments were in measuring what they are supposed to measure. And we used Cronbach's alpha coefficient. In that, 10 samples from a school which was not part of the sample was used, and this was put to SPSS, was entered in SPSS, and then correlational analysis was analyzed. Now we realized that in all, the Cronbach's alpha coefficient values for government factors, parental factors were as follows: 0.1, 0.813, 0.826, 0.728, and 0.814. However, the overall reliability for the entire set of data was 0.824. Then the alpha coefficient for the items were all above 0.8 if you look at it carefully. And this indicates that there was a good internal consistency of the 60 items according to the rule of thumb by Malley, where I said if the alpha coefficient value is 0.9%, 0.9, then it means the internal consistency is excellent. If it's 0.8, then it is good. If it's 0.7, it is acceptable. Like that. And this therefore means that our internal consistency was very good. Next is a field data quality control. We did not only take into consideration the quality of the quantitative data, we also tried as much as possible to collect qualitative data in a quality manner. We anticipated no response bias to happen, where members would not give us response, but this wasn't there. And the refusal to participate was not also counted because the members whom we deployed to collect this data were well trained and we told them to establish a rapport first before collecting or asking questions. Then the investigators' bias was catered for by the training which we did, and the respondents' bias. We expected some respondents to give us wrong information. However, this was handled by first of all explaining to them why the research was conducted. The objectives were explained to them, and that minimized biased responses from the respondents. And we made sure that the privacy of the respondents were catered for, in the sense that the interviews we did were done in closed doors. The data processing were as follows. One, we used the statistical package SPSS version 25 to carry out ordinary regression analysis, and this was intended to identify the most significant factors that affected the performance. And then the qualitative data were collected and then analyzed thematically, and this was able to give us the required information. The research was conducted according to 8 core principles, and this includes voluntary participation of the members, of the, particularly the students and also the stakeholders, and we assured them of the confidentiality of information when they gave us, and the truth in research, and the acknowledgement of works of those who did research earlier was also taken into consideration. And we also promised that to them that whatever information they will give us, we will keep it to ourselves. So their names will not be included, and indeed that is what happened. Now, presentation of the data, the findings. First, we looked at the findings we got from, on ground about academic performance. Now, from that table, you realize that most of the candidates of PLE in 2020 scored second division, or division 2, and that was 57%. Those who got division 1 were 36.9%. And these are the people who joined secondary school. It therefore means that most of the candidates who got division 1 and 2 managed to join secondary school, which is above the national average of 11.1 and then 46.6%. And few of those who got division 3 and 4 were unable to join secondary education according to our findings. And probably these people could be at home or they could have joined skill training institutions. Now, students' views on factors affecting or contributed to their better performance. Majority of the students attributed their better performance to their personal efforts. And then others attributed it to government factors, and then the teacher factors, others attributed to their good home environment, and peer inspiration. Now, about the personal factors that contributed to their performance, when we asked them, really what made you to perform very well, they gave a number of reasons. Some of them said they concentrated in reading their books. Some said the discipline they had was very good. They consulted teachers. They were so committed to study. They managed time effectively. They were determined and eager to learn. They had a positive attitude towards learning. A group discussion was there, and there was also competition for better performance. That was what they said, and the statistics is there. And when we look at all those, what they contributed, we realized the personal factors that contributed to the better performance were academic self-efficacy and then intrinsic motivation. And these were brought about by fear of failing because of closure of schools due to COVID-19 pandemic. So fear actually acted as a moderating factor that compelled the students to work very hard. And these are the verbatims which we collected from the students' semi-structured questionnaire. One said, I think what enabled me to perform well was that I was focused and loved education. The other one said, I made sure that I consulted teachers, attended lessons, and managed time very well. In the COVID-19 pandemic, I managed to read books midday, in the morning, spend hours working with parents. These were some of the verbatims. Now, about government factors. They said that the government factors that contributed to their better performance included self-study materials that government distributed to them. And that was said by 48% of the learners. And then the lessons on radio and TV also contributed to their better performance, including COVID-19 preventive measures, which actually made the teaching and learning environment conducive. And during that time, there was not much playing because of the social distance. So this made them to concentrate and had that better performance. Views related to government factors, the verbatim is there. I don't want to read it because of time factor. And the parental factors, the students said they performed well because their parents really contributed so much. And this included guidance and counseling, which their parents gave them. It also included setting up conducive home environment, parental participating in coaching. Some parents coached them, their children, and some parents also engaged teachers to coach their children during the lockdown. And the parents also contributed in terms of motivating them or encouraging them. And all of this came about because of fear. The parents felt that if they did not do anything, their children would not perform. And that was the reason. So fear in this case also acted as a moderating factor, which eventually led to the better performance of the student. And that is the verbatim about how parents really helped their children to perform. One said, in my view, my parents' intensive advice also encouraged me to work hard and excel in my PLE. Also, my parents provided me with enough materials such as pens, books, and others to help me in learning. Someone said that to the best of my judgment, what enabled me to perform well was the newspaper such as Orumuru, I don't know this one, that contained well-equipped questions that kept me on track. So you can see the parents really contributed a lot in terms of materials, scholastic materials, buying newspapers. All was because of fear. If nothing is done, these children will fail. Student view on school teacher classroom practices. The students said that the teachers, some of them gave them home packages, and then they also conducted online lessons. The teachers were hardworking. Some of the schools even provided reading materials for them, and there was frequent and intensive assessment by schools. All of this contributed to their better performance. And these are some of the verbatims the students were able to say. Now, coming to the findings from interviews conducted with these SMCs, parents, teachers, and head teachers, these were their findings. A number of them say the numerous assessments by schools actually contributed to the better performance of the learners because it improved their knowledge and skills. It helped learners to reflect on their weaknesses and helped teachers to evaluate the learners. And then guidance and counseling was also one of the factors they mentioned, which actually motivated the learners to work very hard. And that led to also improved discipline, love, and hard work. Extra and remedial lessons were conducted in schools that made the learners to perform very well. And all of this came because of fear still. Because schools also felt that if nothing is done, these learners were going to fail, and therefore the teachers became even dedicated to their service. And this is what some of the SMC and stakeholders reported. The teamwork, they said that the parents, the teachers, the head teachers, school administration, the NGOs all work hand in hand. So that team spirit actually made everything easy. Even implementation became easy, and that is why performance was good. The abridged curriculum by NCDC, they said this one increased teacher enthusiasm and love for revision. It also led to completion of the syllabus in time, which gave enough time even for revision. And it also built confidence in the learners, because finishing the syllabus actually helped the learners to build confidence. So that fear actually reduced. Self-learning, self-study home learning materials, these were all mentioned by the stakeholders, the SMCs, the parents. The TV lessons, they also mentioned that, and those other factors I had mentioned earlier. Now, the findings on objective 2. The objective 2 was to examine the relationship between significant factors and academic performance. And in this case, we tested the hypothesis that there were positive and significant relationships between factors that contributed to candidates' overall better performance in PLE. And the method we used here involved administering of self-administered questionnaire to the senior threes. And this was a questionnaire which contained the questions on 5 Likert scale, which includes ratings like agree, disagree, and up to that. Data analysis, there were the data collected here was again put to SPSS for analysis, and in that we started with descriptive statistics. We did that, and then we did also component factor analysis and ordinary regression analysis. And the results, I'm going straight to now the finding of that. Yeah, I was rushing too much. The findings and proof of the hypothesis. The findings here really indicated that the hypothesis, the alternative hypothesis, was true. That there were positive and significant relationships between factors that contributed to better academic performance. And these were the factors, according to our statistical, that is the regression analysis. We found the radio and TV lessons, as well as the online lessons, were significantly contributed to the better performance. And when you look at the p-value, it's 0.00, implying that it is less than 0.05. And that means that was a significant factor. And that therefore means that the more radio lessons, TV lessons, online lessons were conducted, the better the performance. And then the timely completion of the syllabus, effective time management, adequate teaching, giving assignments, homework, marking, and giving timely feedback, and was also statistically significant with a p-value of 0.00, implying that the more timely syllabus were completed, the more assessment in terms of questions given to learners, marking and giving timely feedback, the better the performance. And then also the respect for school rules, and the teachers also helped the learners to perform very well. And that is what we found out from our statistics, and it is on that we based our conclusion for this study. The conclusion now is that the better performance in PLE was a result of the high level of cooperation, that is teamwork, among the different stakeholders, the parental guidance, counseling, monitoring the behavior of their children. You know, because of the COVID-19, the students and the stakeholders say parents were at home and therefore they were able to monitor the behavior of their children. And that really helped a lot. It therefore means that really as parents we need to get time and sit with our children, find out their problems, and then guide them accordingly. The effective teaching and assessment of learners' performance and timely feedback was another factor. The government and NGO provision of necessary resources that enhanced teaching and learning was paramount. Learners' intrinsic motivation and academic self-efficacy was another one. The discipline among learners was very important. The TV and the radio lessons really helped a lot, together with the abridged curriculum produced by NCTC. And therefore, we also say that there was a positive, significant relationship between the availability of adequate materials and effective teaching, timely completion of syllabus, discipline among teachers and learners, and academic performance. All in all, what we are saying is that it was an interplay among the school factors, government factors, parental factors, and learner factors that contributed to the better performance, as it is in the school effectiveness theory. And these are the recommendations to the ministry. We say the ministry should revitalize and integrate the use of TV, radio lessons, and online lessons. This should be made part and parcel of the teaching and learning process in schools. And this can be done especially during holidays. The National Curriculum Development Center should continue playing an active and vital role in the provision of adequate and user-friendly learning materials to aid in the home study of the learners. We found out that the home learning materials really helped learners to learn a lot when they were at home. The Directorate of Education Standards should continue, should always and regularly monitor the teaching and learning of children in schools. And then ensure that syllabus are completed. Local governments. The local government should continue to sensitize the different stakeholders to play their different roles effectively as a team. Teamwork is very important. The school management and school administration should closely supervise the teaching and learning process to aid in effective teaching and learning that can result in good academic performance. To the parents, we are saying they should they should ensure strict enforcement of discipline among the learners to enhance learning. And they also continue to guide their children and encourage them so that they perform very well. The students should be encouraged and supported by their parents in order to perform very well. With this, I have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Please, please present us another round of applause. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Now, I take this opportunity to call upon the discussant, Professor Harris Mumba. I trust you will introduce yourself in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. My name is Mulumba Matthias. I'm an associate professor and Dean School of Education at Makerere University. Thank you. So thank you so much for inviting me over here to discuss this important topic. Our chief guest and chair of board of directors, the ED, executive director, UNEB officials, including the Director of Research and Innovations, Ms. Florence Obong and Mr. Ambama, the presenters, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I got an opportunity to read through this paper from the first page to the last page. And I'm going to say that it is a well-written research report which actually followed acceptable scientific process. And I totally agree with my director here, Research and Innovations, that this was an academic research. And I would like to congratulate the team that worked on this paper. Thank you so much. Research is critical, I would say, to the survival of any organization. And I'm glad the chief guest brought this out very clearly. If your name is to exist for many more years to come, then you have to indulge in research. And the director also alluded, Director of Research and Innovation and Development alluded to this. So, there are various good areas in this research report. And because of time that I've been given, probably I might not go much into those areas. But I'd like to just dwell much on the areas for improvement so that the research report, like my colleague who discussed the first paper said, that at the end of the day, it will become a public document which will have to be consumed by many other stakeholders apart from those who are in this auditorium. So what I'm going to say, and I'll try to say that I'll try to be as brief as possible, is not intended to pull down the report, but rather to improve it. So I'll try as much as possible to do that. Let me start with the concept of better performance. Our researchers told us that, clearly stipulated that, actually the paper says why better performance? Factors which led to better performance in the primary living examination in Uganda in 2020. So, I'm glad to inform you that the concept of better performance was explained and operationalized by the researchers. But the question that comes with that is that, what was the measure of better performance? What did they use to measure better performance in 2020? Was it in terms of obtaining more distinctions in a particular subject area? Was this performance in terms of pupils who passed PLE overall? Or was it perceived in terms of conceptualization of content, skills, and competences by the pupils? So what the report seems to stick to is the number of distinctions and the overall performance of pupils who wrote national examinations between 2016 and 2020. So the measure of better performance took a number of years. They looked at performance from 2016 to 2020. However, if we are to analyze contents in Table 1, there is unfortunately, I can't flash Table 1, but it is on page 13 if you have the report. We see that in this regard, pupils who passed PLE in those 5 years were as follows. Here we are looking at all pupils who passed PLE vis-a-vis the number of pupils or children who sat PLE. In 2020, they were 89.5%. 2019, they were 90.3%. 2018, they were 80.2%. 2017, they were 90.4%. And 2016, the pupils who passed PLE were 86.8%. Unfortunately, you might not get in the report. These are my computations, because I had to look at the overall, percentage of those who passed PRE, not looking at them in terms of the subject areas or distinctions. So 2020, performance in 2020 was within the range of achievement when compared to the previous performance. According to what I got, it was just within, because this was 89.5. The previous year, 2019, it was 90.3. Then when you go to 2017, 90.4. So now, the researchers give us an explanation as to why they are saying 2020 was better, they regarded as better performance. They say that the explanation given is that pupils who passed in grade 1 increased by 1% in 2020 compared to those in 2019, which is true. Those who passed in division 1. However, the overall percentage of pupils who passed in period in 2020 registered a 0.8 fluctuation compared to those in 2019. You see? When you look at a particular grade, 2020 is performing better. But when you look at the overall performance in terms of those who passed, there was a fluctuation of 0.8% compared to those in the previous year of 2019. So therefore, notwithstanding the context under which teaching and learning took place during 2020, we can term this as, we can look at it as better performance, but I mean as good performance, but within the range of achievement compared to the previous 4 years. Now, when we come to the government factor, the various factors formed the independent variables. These were government factors, school factors, pupil factors, or student factors, as they called it, etc. But when you look at the government factors, as stipulated in the report, these are basically discussed in terms of provision of materials to pupils, preparing radio and TV lessons, etc. But I think the government factors were beyond providing materials. And they were beyond preparing TV and radio lessons. For example, the presidential addresses to the nation. Those messages. The formation of the team of scientists with their routine updates on COVID-19. To me, I think they provided a psychological kind of buffer against fear. So as researchers, I think we cannot leave out that, because first and foremost, we are taking this report to the political end, either the ministry or, so if you don't mention that, the messages of the president also created something. But of course, having said that, there was that psychological buffer, I think, against fear. So that when the government said, take your children back to school, we all took our children back to school because we knew that there were safeguards. SOPs have been put in place. So I think in the report we can include that. We can find a way of, including that. The immunization that took place. They all provided, some safeguards, to many of to the parents and the pupils that the school is now safe. And because of that, they settled psychologically and they were able to study, write their exams, and passed. So it created some kind of confidence, I think, both in the parents and the pupils. So when we come to the conceptual framework, of course the conceptual framework is divided into two. There are the independent variables, which is basically contained of the factors that led to better or good performance. And then the dependent variable is the better academic performance. But I got an issue with the word better. Because You know, when you do that and you put the independent variables, you know, you show all those factors, government factors, PP factors, school factors, etc., and then you say better academic performance. To any researcher, it would mean that whenever you put this in place, there will be better. So we can remove the qualifier better and say academic performance. Then for you, give your explanation. So yeah, with the conceptual framework, I felt that, you know, we cannot, whenever we put those factors, it's not a guarantee that you're going to get better academic performance. Literature review was rich, I would say, and it was based on variables, that is the independent and the dependent variables. And the reader, by the way, when anyone reads this, he or she appreciates the emphasis put on these variables. But my issue, and I think as researchers, the most effective way was to review literature based on themes emanating from the objectives. You see? Because with this kind of review, if we are to base on variables, you know, we look at government factors, we bring literature to that, we bring this, we lose the interlinkages between, and relationships between variables. So I would suggest that probably if something can be done, we could, review this literature based on objectives and not on variables. And at the same time, I would like the researchers, my researchers here, to identify the gaps in this literature. Because, you know, these gaps sometimes we think they are not important. They're important. You know, when we identify them, they help us to strengthen the recommendations. You know, that so and so, but so they did this, and probably they didn't go into this. In this study, we have done this kind of work. Therefore, through that, when we recommend, you know, our recommendations will look a little bit stronger. The methodology, let me try to go through very quickly. I liked also the methodology. It was clearly laid out. It was a mixed methods approach. And it enabled the researchers to obtain data, and that is important. And the method they used, actually, like I said, yes, they were able to bring out data, sorry, I've said that already. However, there was a need to analyze essential documents as part of the study methods. You can, you know, when you say better performance in this particular year, and we are comparing to some other performance, and also having seen what happened, the context under which our children were studying, you know, which was the lockdowns and COVID and all that, we cannot afford not to look at the examination items set in the 4 areas. By researchers. We cannot afford not to look at those items. Okay, we call them questions, examination questions. What comes to any researcher's mind is that, were they standard questions? Or they were set in such a way that whoever set the exams felt that since these students have been at home for long, they are not studying, let us make them simple. Because you need to give a comment to those questions. Were they standard? Secondly, did they cover the coverage? When you look at SST, did SST cover the entire syllabus? What about mathematics? What about English and science? And in this kind of research, it would actually, you know, it is one thing that I was looking at. You know, it would strengthen this research. This research report. When you come out and say, despite all this, the context which was full of COVID and lockdowns and all that, the items, the examination items that were set were standard, and they covered the syllabus. You know, that sentence alone will actually make a lot of meaning to this. But this is it's not there, and I think you can do it. Then on the issue of the ethical standards, I'm glad my chief guest, Professor Bua, talked about this. You know, this is a kind of research which included minors, senior 3 students. Were they 18 and above? And at the same time, it included humans. So with this kind of research, I mean, there was a need for us to go through an ethical kind of clearance. Okay? There was a need for us to submit it for vetting in the IRB. But I'm glad the chief guest said that UNEB is going to set up its research ethics committee. Yeah? And I think when it is put in, and I think it will be separate from the Directorate of Research, Innovation and Involvement. Yes, because it's important. Thank you. Chapter 4 about presentation and interpretation of findings. I'll go there very quickly. When you read the first paragraph, it clearly shows that data was presented according to the study objectives, which is good. However, when one reads further, it becomes clear that data was presented according to study tools, interviews, so it takes back to what I talked about, that in such a case, the reader or the recipient of this research is likely to miss the interlinkages between variables and the relationships, between the study variables. But at the same time, you can create a section where these interlinkages could be discussed. You could either go back and and present this data according to objectives, or create another section that will talk about that linkages or relationships between the variables. And also in chapter 3, chapter 4, what comes out very clearly is that when you are discussing findings or data from the study, you basically talk about data from pupils and data from the school. So some of us, I wanted to see data from the government factors. I also wanted to see data from the SMC, that is the school management committees. But it seems to be like, the report I received, I did not see that. And I think we can include it because it's there, and I believe it's there. Yeah. So, but at the same time, like my colleague who discussed the first one saying, your unit of analysis was the students in senior 3 now, who sat P7 in 2020, isn't it? And when you set a particular group of respondents as your unit of analysis, they form the basis upon which you discuss your data. The rest of the respondents come up either to agree with what these people are saying or to disagree, or they bring some new information altogether. You see? And like in chapter 4, I would have loved to see that, that data is coming up by, the unit of analysis, which is the student now, who were pupils then, coming out, and then on a particular research item, a research item, for example. Let me give an example of school fees. And on the issue of school fees payment, as a contributing factor towards performance, the researchers clearly say that 63 students said they performed well because their parents had paid fees on time and therefore had no disturbance at school. So what I wanted to see is that what did the parents say about this? Do they agree that they also paid or they didn't pay? What about the school management committees who are in charge of looking after the schools? What about the ministry's, voice in terms of school payment? You see? So when you present data like that, it means that on a particular finding, you are going to get the views of all stakeholders. And at the end of the day, you'll be able to actually either say that school fees payment was one of the factors that contributed to better performance or not. But if we see students are saying school fees here, and then we don't find any voice to back this up or to disagree with this, then it might become a problem. Lastly, chapter 5, I would say the discussion was good, and the cross-referencing was good. You did a very good job by actually showing us what other regions are doing in terms of in their performance during COVID-19. Yeah, but still on these findings also, we don't see findings from parents coming up, findings from school management committees, National Cultural Development Center. Research is what we call research a systematic inquiry. What you put in chapter 1, we want to see it, it has to move up to the end. We don't lose anything in the middle. The moment you lose anything, the researcher will start, the reader or recipient of your research will start to question this and that. So, I think there's a need also to discuss findings from other stakeholders. Then, finally, the recommendations are good, like you might have seen. The only problem, they lack the action component. The what to do is okay, but the how to do it. Remember, you are the researchers, so you know very well, if we take this to the ministry, whoever is mandated to implement this will actually, needs help, he needs guidance. How should he or she implement what you have come up with? And I'm glad the chief guest clearly told us that this research should be turned into action. So as researchers, it's simple. By the way, you can even spend 3-4 pages explaining on how a particular recommendation can be implemented. We shouldn't save time, space on that. After discussing, seeing the finding, then let us go down and see how can we implement this. If we want to come up with a blended learning, how can blended learning be implemented? If we are talking about the issue of providing materials, the government should continue to provide materials to schools. How best can they be provided? Who is going to provide these materials? Because of course with COVID, we saw they were put at the LOCs, chairpersons, they also tried with their university, some, we want them in the Kasasi. But how best can they be, can these materials reach, the recipient or the person who is to benefit from these materials? That is actually up to the researcher to take the implementer, whoever is going to implement that, into the process of implementing the recommendation that you have set. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think you agree with me that that was a very good analysis of that paper. So I trust in that. Thank you. All right, now we go to the next item on this agenda. We are going to have a general discussion where we are having the two presentations discussed, I would like to, Prof, you may stay there because one may want to shoot at you. Yes. Yeah, I will kindly request the presenters of the previous paper to, the previous paper, because the post and also the previous discussant. I think there is enough space there. If you may come to those chairs, these ones here, in front. Now, I will say that for the people who are going to ask questions, please stay focused. We are going to address these specific papers. So if you are framing a question, comment, or reaction, you should be reacting to these two papers. And please be mindful of time. We are going to have only 20 minutes. So I request that if you are coming up with your points, even if they are 5, make sure you don't take more than 1.5 minutes. I will also encourage you not to do repetitions. If somebody may say, I want to add on somebody's whatever, please simply acknowledge it and don't repeat it. Simply add on yours so that we don't waste too much time here. We shall go by show of hands. The first one I saw is there. And the second one, third, fourth. Let's first take those and then the fifth, then we shall come to next. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I would like to appreciate UNED and those other colleagues for coming out with these reports.
Please mention your name and who the question is directed to.
Fine. My name is Richard Weiser from Chambogo University. The first questions go to the first presenters. I wanted to find out from you, with the first objective, you were finding out how understanding how the stakeholders or students and teachers were understanding the cultural-based. So I was wondering, how did you measure the understanding? For example, if I answered, what is cultural-based, and I give you the answer, does it mean I understand it? So I was wondering how we are measuring that. And then the other finding that you give, like you said, some teachers could not allow students to go and demonstrate on the chalkboard. I think if we send this out, for example, for us as teachers, we are even advising teacher educators, I'm a teacher educator, we advise teachers that don't allow these students to come to the board because we want everybody to participate. So if one comes, then you are only giving one person, and these are mature, you'll find these have some engagements. If someone with, say, has some grudges with, goes to the blackboard to demonstrate something, the other person may be losing out. But if all of us do, then we shall present together. So it may not be so much that is not allowing the cultural based. So it may not be so much a point. This goes to the next presenters, the next research. This is my, this is our area as teachers, and we are glad. I want to just make two statements. That when you are finding out the factors that lead to improvement in performance, and you are giving, when you look at your findings, I want to say, we have politicians, and we don't want this to be dictated by politicians. One of the key issues that you found out in your field, you are saying radios worked very well. And you're also aware that the radios were even discussed one time in the news that we are removed and they do not work. After knowing that they are not there in some radios, how comes that now we are saying radios worked best? Now I want to pose a question. If someone asked you, you have told us that these are the things that led to, let me make a summary, that led to better performance, as they have been saying. Radios, effective management, time management, syllabus completion. If I ask a question, which of those that cannot lead to better performance? This was public knowledge. So what did I expect? We expected to say, if we want to confuse these politicians, because they are going to base on this and they, in fact, discount the report. If I ask, for example, which significance radio presentation brought, that means I expected it in percentage. Which percentage did it contribute? If I ask, which one worked better? How how do you confirm? This I just say public information. Everybody can say syllabus coverage improves. This improves. It is not reality that can take me to the field. But if I come up with a percentage, say, radios contributed 0.6 or contributed 10%, according to this, then we shall say, yeah, yes, it is true. Lastly, I have liked the way Professor presented this. And members take note of it. However much he don't say it well. But I beg your pardon. However much he didn't emphasize it. He was saying it well, but it's like it was a bit calm. When you say we had this led to better performance, that the government involvement, they brought this. If I ask a question, you mean before COVID, the government was not there? They were not providing this? Can you give us something unique that led to that during that period? We saw this, we saw this. When you say they provided materials, they have been doing that. So what was unique? Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sharon Atfia, I work with the Director of Education Standards. I thank UNED for this research that has just been presented. However, I have a few questions to the presenters. Number one, for the first presenter, in case this study was not conducted, what would have happened? I've not seen that in the problem statement. And secondly, how did Bloom's taxonomy facilitate research question 3? How is it aligned to research question 3? And most times we quote Cronbach Alpha, but it has got its own weaknesses. For example, it caters for only internal consistency between constructs and leaves out the external consistency between construct and another construct. How did you cater for that weakness? Did you think of composite reliability to have a true reliability value? Then how are these research findings going to change? How are they going to change status quo? Have we thought of a policy brief? Many times we do such researches, we present, and they end there. So have we thought of a policy brief? I don't know whether it is 50 or 40. I have seen a lot of descriptive statistics, but I've not seen any inferential statistics. Yet we had questions about what extent. So I did not see any inferential statistics. For example, if we are looking at schools which were well furnished, how do they compare with those that are not well furnished? So what was the extent? I did not see conclusions based on objectives as far as the first presenter is concerned. Concerning the second presentation, how did we test for normality and linearity of data? Because we went ahead to do correlation analysis. Did this data qualify for correlation analysis? And I've not seen adjusted R-squared or adjusted correlation coefficient. So what is the contribution of those factors that were found significant to academic performance? What was that proportion? How much did they contribute? Those factors that were in the model, and what did other external factors contribute? I've not seen that. And which factor was most significant for us as policymakers to prioritize? Chair, and submit.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to observe the protocol. I'm Robert Ikwa. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Primary Education. My concern is going to be based on primary education. That is PLP. I have only two issues. One, when we released the results for 2020 PLP, there was a common voice from the public that the results were just meant to raise the stakeholders, note that the learners record and that. And so what Professor put across as necessary, and also noted it down. Probably the researchers needed to indicate that the weight of the exam was actually standard. But also the other argument would be that the exam would have been standard, but in the marking, probably there was some lenience or something like that. But also in the area of what? Of grading, is it a word? There could have been an adjustment so that instead of having a D1 beginning from this, 90 for example, could have been brought down. So the researchers could be able to put that so that it clears that dust. Then the other area, I said I had only two, is the one of one of the contributing factors to the good performance, being the numerous tests. And our country, our schools have gone on doing a lot of testing of learners day in and day out. And I think this kind of finding and maybe recommendation will continue to motivate them to do a lot of, and I think this is related to drilling learners just to coach them for purposes of passing the exam. Why don't we capture those areas which promote concept development and developing the skills of the learners, as opposed to this kind of recommendation? I submit, Chair.
Thank you. Santos, Chairman, House number 5, I work at NCDC. 2-3 points. Start with the first presentation. I want to thank you for this eye-opening opportunity. I would be interested if the data you collected was segregated, so that we know in the performance of the CBC, probably out of the different regions, this region is more needy, this one needs more support. In terms of government and private schools, probably the government schools need more support, or the private. And according to class, because you know where we are starting from. Good enough, you say the focus was near 3 and 4. How are they? Somebody would expect all of the pioneers have more challenges. Those who are following are getting it easier. All this will have implications at the policy level in terms of where to start any intervention. It will be very good. Number 2, I would have loved some specificity of the challenge. Because when you talk of the curriculum, we're talking about the development, you talk about the understanding of the curriculum, the interpretation of the curriculum, the implementation of the curriculum, and assessment. Where is the greatest challenge for the teachers? Will it be in all of them equally? So that if need be, we can be able to develop an intervention that takes care of the most serious need. Number 3 is, I'm now bringing this back to you now. You know, assessment helps a lot in supporting the curriculum implementation process. My question would be, from this research, how do we align assessment in order to nail down CBC? Because I was expecting some information about how continuous assessment is performing and how we can use this continuous assessment to realize the learning outcomes in the schools. I think that would be very good. And finally, the voice of the parents. You know, the group of resourcing base is settling on the parent. But I think in all your data collection, we didn't get any opinion of the parents. Chief Karahanga, maybe, or you didn't mention it. Otherwise, we know parents play a huge role, and many of them already talking about the financial implications. That is the first presentation. Presentation 2, I have 2 issues. I loved Dr. Sharon's analysis. When you talk about a regression, I'm expecting a model y is equal to ax plus dy plus cz, so that I know the function. To what extent does each independent variable contribute to the ultimate performance of the dependent variable? And the variables didn't appear in the topic. And you didn't see them very well in the objective, but somewhere I saw some few things. And then in the conclusion, we again didn't go for the personal factors, the school factors, the government. In the conclusion, again, we went specific to reduce. Now, reduce could be one of the government interventions, but in totality, what is the contribution of the government factors towards the dependent variable we're talking about? Number two is, what is the implication of this research? Should we send children home so that they perform better? Yeah. I'll be interested in that. Because, but one thing is true, because when we are developing a curriculum, we look at the activities people do within the community, and we bring these activities into the classroom. This will be pointing to the fact that the way teachers have been teaching in the classroom is not how things are done at home. So when the children had time to do these things practically at home, they learned more than the situation where they were confined within the four walls. I'm very, very interested in that. So what would be the implications of these findings? I'm so grateful. This is a very beautiful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Sokewo for the Information Science Commission. I was originally part of the online audience, but later on I had to rush here to speak this physically about the training of teachers. One of the needs which came out in the first research is about was teacher training. You know, it was a little confusing. The teachers, whereas the teachers acknowledged that they knew about the curriculum, the same teachers say they need additional training. The training for the CBC followed a cascading model. So it was like master trainers moving it down. So like from whom do these teachers want to receive this particular training? Because at the end of the day, if you say you know about the curriculum, and then you say you need training, and we have had this training in a cascading model, then we need to critically understand which kind of training, what are the gaps. Then about the classrooms being overcrowded and this being used as a measure, the reason as to why teachers use particular methods of teaching. Possibly yes and possibly no. Not all the classrooms are possibly overcrowded. Not all the teachers are possibly overloaded. So what are the standards, which standards are we looking at? And what are the realities you form on ground? The teachers are overloaded. What extent? How many periods are they teaching per week? And all that. So we need to really zoom a little bit to understand this. Then time factor, I think we needed to understand it a little bit. But most importantly, I wanted to see a recommendation to UNEB itself. Because at the end of the day, you have found a problem and you're preparing an examination. So what are we learning? UNEB itself, what are you learning from these findings that you have formed in the field, and how are they informing your examination preparation processes? Then for the second research, better. Better itself is a comparative word. So better. So I liked how the professor brought it up. So we need to really know, are we talking about better performance or good performance? And then the implications, like my colleague says, I'll zoom onto the curriculum bit, because one of the findings was that the abridged curriculum helped the children to perform well. So why do we still use the long curriculum if the abridged curriculum itself helped the children perform well, which is much shorter anyway? So we need to zoom in a little bit. Then consent. I'm happy that somebody highlighted it. You're dealing with minors, so we needed to know if there was any kind of consent, either from their parents or from their benefactors at school level. Then, yes, basically the time lapse, maybe. We are looking at an event of 2020 in 2024. So what is the possibility that the students being in senior 3 right now, they comprehend causes of better performance better than they would have comprehended them at that time. So the time lapse itself has a little bit of implication. Probably next time when we want to study, we would study it much earlier when the event has just occurred. But because the students are now going into senior 3, they themselves have developed better and can comprehend issues much better than they would have comprehended them in when they had just finished the exams. You know, the teachers and all the other factors, the mobility of teachers. Summaries. So basically, I think that is all. But most importantly, to thank the researchers, quite some significant work done. But we need to polish a little bit to make these studies more informative and more applicable. Thank you.
Oh, him, then comes the floor.
Thank you. I'm Dr. John Bokasija from Faculty of Education, Kawa University. I thank the researchers and the presenters, and my focus will be on the first presentation. And the discussants, the presenter said that the study definitely ended up developing a model. And my question is, how did you develop this model? What are the theoretical orientations behind this model? Where did you test it from? What are the results? And what is the epistemological and axiological orientations behind this model? Thank you.
Thank you. Innocent Kwasipe from Mara University of Science and Technology. To the two presenters, I would have loved to hear something about social demographics. I understand you collected data from different social demographic backgrounds, and it would have been better to have a more rigorous analysis to bring in their implications onto your study variables. If you look at performance, who performed better in terms of gender, rural and urban, and other social demographics. Even the first discussant, the first presenter, it would have been better to bring in the inferential statistics.
Summarize your question.
That's perfect. Thank you.
We just have one last one because we have run for one last one.
There's a lady there. A lady. The lady is here. Another lady.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Pamela Nsainana from National Curriculum Reform Center. Most of my questions are asked, but I want to ask about the first presentation. They mentioned about negative attitude towards learners with disabilities. Does it mean that is the only challenge in the curriculum implementation that you found out when it comes to learners with disabilities? Thank you.
Professor, this lady is itching to have one last lady. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank the presenters for the insightful presentations. My name is Ale Nalukwa. I'm a teacher educator from Makerere University. I'm still not convinced about the validity of the beta results. because, better results are not yet convinced about the validity. So the question is, could it be that the exam administered to the learners in 2020 was adjusted, to be less challenging, due to the circumstances, compared to the normal, to the previous normal years. So there's still a big question there. So were there changes to the exam format? So we need really to know that, And my other question goes to the CBC evaluation. So in the opening, they told us that you sampled from 5 regions, but I'm surprised that there are no differences. So we would like to know, were there significant regional differences in implementation of CBC? And if they were there, what were the factors to these discrepancies? And what can we do for the mitigation? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I can see that, as I have predicted, these 2 papers are going to really stimulate people's reactions. But because of time, we cannot go beyond this. I can see so many hands coming up, but you will bear with us. But also, because of time, I will request the presenters. I've been guided that you have been given 2 minutes each to summarize. You choose one of those questions, because you cannot answer all of them. We shall probably have some, maybe people leave your email addresses. We shall send you responses by email and reactions. So, from the first presenter, please 2 minutes quickly, and you summarize your responses, and the same to the second presenters. Thank you.
I think I'll go first. I thank you for all those questions that you have raised. This will be the basis for us to improve on the inscription. They are very good questions, and it's now the moment to try and answer some. I have only 2 minutes. So the question, I'll begin with the last one. The issue of students with disabilities. There is something quite small in the inscription. So the question is, was that all that we could write about SNE? Actually, when you look at SNE, there were quite a number of issues. And what we decided is that a separate study will be undertaken for SNE. Because remember, this is competence-based. So if you are talking about SNE, competence-based, the deaf, the blind, and you're talking about competence-based, there is a lot to do. So we are going to do a separate study on this. Probably when we get back here, we shall be able maybe to feed you with the findings. Thank you. Then somebody didn't actually get anything on a recommendation directed to UNEP. UNEP, there was a recommendation, and the recommendation was retooling teachers. That was on CBA. We're already doing that. The issue is, we are doing it, but our pocket is quite limited. We have already traversed about 3 or 4 regions. We are here to do central. So the recommendation was, government should continue funding this. So that was the recommendation, because CBA, CBC, we are doing that. Actually, we are doing much of the work that could have been done by our sister agency, NCBC. We are actually equally doing the CBC, but though the focus would have been on CBA. Yes, parents were not part of the sample. You see, what was there was an opinion we had formed by a teacher. Parents were not part of this the sample. But the issue is, we even have allowed to go to universities, tertiary institutions, so that we get the opinions of the lecturers there, because they would have had plenty to give us as far as this culture is concerned. But we focused on those categories. Then, before I get to that, the people who are key here in the implementation, they are the teachers. So that's why we gave them priority, and those categories you saw. So the issue was, why not, we had the data, why not do a disaggregation of this data per region and categories of schools? We shall do this. Actually, we are planning to do this. So immediately after this dissemination, we are going to get back to our data collected, and we shall do this so that we heavily inform the policy makers. Then there was somebody who talked about, who raised the question on how are we going to brief the policy makers? Because are we going to organize a separate briefing? The policy makers are here in this house. The presenter actually had somebody introducing himself as a commissioner, a primary. Those are the policy makers. So for us, we are doing this, but still we are going to do a public dialogue. And in that public dialogue, probably the minister will be present. So that's that. Then they gave it to me.
Thank you very much, Director Research and Innovations. Now I request the presenters of the second paper to just summarize in less than 2 minutes.
Thank you everyone in the house. Thank you for your wonderful contributions. I think most of them is just going to help us add value to this paper, for which you're very grateful. So for that matter, we thank you for this. And then my sister's fear that there could have been the validity of the items that were used in the question papers. You know, before you let text anything out, it is actually thoroughly checked. These were standard questions, expected standard questions. There was nothing lower. There was no standard lower. And before we went to the field, we first checked on all these areas that are raising a lot of concern, the level of standard for the items, the cases of malpractice. Maybe there were malpractice in the field. The marking wasn't well done. When all these were sorted, that's when we now had to write a proposal to go out to check what really caused this good performance. So there was nothing like that. Everything was. You know, there was my member of what is telling me, if you don't compromise standards,
it needs to come out in the report.
So please go happy that there was nothing in the standard. Okay, so I think that's enough.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking the presenters and the excellent discussants for this session. Please give them an applause. And finally, allow me to do a very important activity. Professors, you may take your seats. As we come to the close, you allow me to invite our ED, who will make some closing remarks. and invite the chief guest to close the event. Please, Mr. E.B., come and invite the chairperson and our board chair, Professor.
Thank you very, very much, Chairperson, for this last session. I want to begin by thanking all of you for having stayed this long, having honored our invitation, and for having taken us so serious to the extent that you have stayed with us up to the end. You really deserve a round of applause. The presenters, I'm also very grateful for the presentations you made. I believe that the audience has picked a lot from what you have said, and I believe that it will add value in one way or another to what they do in their various capacities, or in their various areas of service. The discussant, I am particularly grateful and particularly happy that you came out to give what I want to describe as very penetrating insight into the presentation. Penetrating in the sense that you really dug deep, real deep into the presentations, which I'm sure is going to be very, very helpful as far as refining these presentations are concerned. Thank you very much for having been that candid. You really behaved like the professors we expect you to be. Thank you very much. Well, I shouldn't take a lot of time. Let me now use this moment, take the honor to invite our chief guest, who I particularly want you to give a special round of applause for having stayed with us up to the end. Professor Celestino Ogoa, would you please come and make your closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Ladies and gentlemen, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, usually when you open an engagement like this, you don't sit and close it. You leave somebody else to make that error to close. I stayed because I wanted to be part of the presentation, to understand what the study is about. And secondly, to listen to my colleagues who were discussing the papers. And I would like to thank them. Dr. Mulumba, I've always heard of you, you never met in person. Today I'm happy that I've met you. A lot has been said, we have sat for long. Being a medical doctor, I'm aware of the need to top up our fuel system. I know we took a late break team, but you know when you move the hour for taking something, you disorganize the system. The body is still demanding for lunch. So we want us to go and participate in the lunch. But I want to take the comment made about the title of the second paper. The comments actually will guide us to go and reframe. We use our professors, my professors used to tell me that every researcher wants to portray good results, positive results. And so you can also frame the title to portray positive. But if you had not presented results of the previous years, my professor would not have made that comparison. By the way, there was actually no change. So, to me, what happened is that despite the COVID, we still continue to have good performance, despite the COVID. The same thing was talked about here. The pundits said that COVID was going to decimate Africa. But we realized that actually actually there were fewer deaths in Africa, even though some countries never reported their COVID cases. We had fewer deaths compared to our light countries, the other light countries. Economy of Africa, did it significantly become worse as a result of COVID compared to the rest of the world? No. If I was a policeman, is there any policeman here? Rate of crime went down during COVID. 2, rate of accidents, deaths from accidents also went down. And Sylvester was telling me, maybe we should have COVID back. But what that tells us is certain things can trigger changes in the community undesired, but it turns out to be actually positive. COVID was very negative, but it did have some very positive effect in our community. How many of you were flown abroad for treatment during the lockdown? But today, today we are flying all over, for treatment. For me, when Professor Samson talked about the various statements, regular statements that the president used to give, very regular, and everybody tuned to listen to the president speak to the nation about COVID-19. I would wish he could do the same. Now come back and talk to us about quality of life in Uganda. Every 2 or so weeks, it will keep this country moving forward. Now that he has engaged in the fight against corruption, maybe he wants to do that every 2 weeks. Then we become more sensitized to this unnecessary evil that is happening in our society. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have had a fruitful discussion. For the 2 papers, yes, definitely anybody who has published or produced a paper will know that even you, when you go back to read your own work, you begin to pick the mistakes in it. So this discussion, or we are calling a critique of the works that have been done by our colleagues, is not meant to pull it down, but to help us see how to improve it. And definitely we are going to improve it. And I'm very sure that next time round, the same paper, you'll be able to read it in the public arena. It will be much better than the way. So thank you very much for participating in this process of improving these papers. And now that it started raining, I'm very happy. I started by saying where I'm coming from, there's no rain. So what I'm going to do as I prepare to go back this evening, I'm going to do like the Dubai people did. I'm going to seed the clouds in Barra so that we can have rain in Barra. I don't yet have the magic, but I'm going to pick it from one of you. See how to see the clouds there so that we get rain. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a wonderful day. And I don't want to stand before you on your lunch. I want to thank you once again, congratulate the researchers, the discussants, and of course the chairs of the various sessions. Thank you very much for taking us today. The Secretariat for organizing, sustaining, you have been having water non-stop, you have taken tea, and now I hope they will announce that we shall go and have something. Ladies and gentlemen, have a pleasant afternoon, the rest of the week, and may God bless us all.
Please rise. Thank you so much. I will now call upon